Hello, everybody. My name is Dean of the InkGuild, and I just want to give a quick heads up before we get into our episode of Shorthand. So, we're going to be looking back at episode 3, where we introduce Mark as well as discuss writing to music. Or because we talked about this episode back in May, talking about quarantine and COVID 19 is a bit dated, so please keep that in mind. Aside from that, all of our information, including our social media, will be in the description below. So, with all that being said, let's get into the highlights. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the InkGuild Podcast. I'm Dean, and in this episode, I'm joined by Mark and Gabe.
Hello.
Howdy.
Cool. So, I'll quickly pass it off to Mark by asking, how did you get started on writing, dude?
It started when I was young. I was a big reader as a kid. My favorites were the Great Illustrated Classics. So it was like the really simplified versions of the big novels, Count of Monte Cristo, Robinson Crusoe, that kind of stuff.
Ooh.
And
how'd you get your hands on like some of those books? Like, were they from like parents or friends or?
Yeah, my parents. They used to like sell them at Walmart. They were like $5 a piece.
Oh wow, that's pretty good.
So it was like, yeah, right. So it was like a Christmas tradition. We'd get at least one every year.
So
yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Yeah. So what kind of thing? So like reading a lot as a kid, what kind of made you like really want to become a writer in the first place? So like,
It's
was
hard
it because
to pinpoint, to be honest. I'd say like the first serious short story that I wrote was back in grade 12.
Really?
And it was an assignment given. Yeah, it was. I'd written like a few little random things before that, but nothing real serious or nothing like that.
Okay.
And then she gave us that assignment. That's kind of what got me going, was that one story that I wrote then. So it was literally just write a short story, and we'll go down the emotional pathway here. And my parents were like in the middle of splitting up then.
Oh, okay.
So it was like, oh yeah, the big angsty moment. So yeah, I wrote a story just randomly about that kind of stuff. And, it was cathartic. So I kept at it from there. I think with that first story, it was pretty much just the cathartic. Like, I felt so much better afterwards. Like, I felt like I could kind of get a handle on what was going on. It was kind of, you felt like you could almost have a little bit of control over it because you now turned it into a fictional narrative that you've created and that you control. And so I think that was really helpful there. And then from there, I wrote, this is weird. I went from short story to a novel, and I wrote an entire novel.
It's quite the jump. I respect that.
Yeah, right. And it was fully the escapist thing. The novel was entirely like this random fantasy of mine of like just packing it up, moving away, and just having some huge adventure. I mean, the novel is garbage, but
Here, tell us about it. So, you've given a really quick synopsis, but like, tell us, like, I guess first of all, why suddenly make the jump from like a short story to a novel? Like, did you have just so many ideas after that first short story that you wanted to start writing down, or?
Yeah, I think the reason it became a novel was just because I was able to weave a narrative that long and that big. Like, the idea was big enough that I was actually able to turn it into that. So it was kind of just, I don't think I intended it to be a novel when I started it. It just ended up morphing into one kind of thing.
What's the name of it?
It was literally just called Jacob, named after the main character.
Nice. What's the story? You say that he goes on a big adventure, but like...
Yeah, so he ups and leaves Calgary with this girl that he'd been into or whatever, and moves to Ireland, where he gets caught up in a resurgence of the IRA, the Ireland Republican Army, I think it was, something like that.
Ooh.
It's like, yeah, like, it was built on a complete misunderstanding of that situation. they were a full-on like terrorist group apparently, but
Yeah.
my 18-year-old self was like, oh, I can turn this into a war story. And that, yeah, it was Northern Ireland rebelling against the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes about as much sense as Canada rebelling against the UK. It's just, there's no reason for it. I don't know how I got onto the IRA thing. I remember I was visiting Newfoundland with my family, and this really, really thick fog rolled in one day while we were driving. And it was just like, as I was driving, I was thinking, wow, this fog would be so threatening in war because, like, so many soldiers could be hiding in that and just appear randomly. You'd never even see them coming. And so that was where the whole thing came from. I just wanted to come up with this concept of these fog-walking soldiers. There ended up only being one scene involving that in the whole book, but it was the one scene of the whole book that I actually enjoyed. So,
have you tried taking it anywhere? Like, have you tried...
I've considered it. Actually, I think I did submit it for publishing after I had written it. I was trying to find a literary agent, but I never did hear back.
Yeah.
I still have it. I sent it through the registered mail to kind of have that like fake copyright going on kind of thing. So I still have the sealed registered mail somewhere in the house.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, it could always be a good piece of memento, right?
That's exactly it. And I did learn a lot of lessons through writing it, so.
What were some of the lessons that you had learned from that first project?
I think one of the biggest ones that always jumps to mind is, I know it gets said a lot, but it's the write what you know kind of thing. I was trying to place a story in Northern Ireland, a place I have never been. And then, like, the other really big one was character sketches. I was doing a read-through, and I was on, like, page 300 when I, like, noticed a character's hair color had changed.
Yeah. Oh.
And it was just like, oh, man, I have to sift through here and find 300 pages of references to the wrong hair color and fix it.
Oh, I feel that.
It was...
Yeah.
It's just terribly discouraging.
Bless Control F. Moving along, I guess before we get into really our big conversation topic, I wanted to ask one quick thing, and that is your support system. And I had talked about that with Alex last episode, and we had been talking about, like, you know, just who are the people that kind of helped you, you know, who are the kind of people who were supporting you as you were doing, like, all your reading, all your writing, like, if you want to guide us through that.
Yeah, especially with, like, the novel, probably the biggest one was my girlfriend Carmen. We've been together for 12 years now. So she's been...
Congratulations.
Kind of like... Thank you, kindly. Yeah, she's been the biggest one since I started writing. She's always the first one to get the first draft, and she's always got good thoughts. Yeah, she's my biggest sounding board for sure.
Has that been with, like, has that been with, like, future stories after that novel, like?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you were in the class when I read The Thief, the Crier, and Those Damn Dark Ages, but the original version of that story looks nothing like what the finished product looked like. And it was from driving around with Carmen and trying to talk out what ideas weren't working, what bits of satire I wanted to throw in, and how to make them work kind of thing. Like, she's always been the big one to help me get ideas out.
That's great. It's good to have it's really good to have someone, like, you know, it's good to have a support system that, you know, supports you and everything, but to have someone really engage with your work, like, even if they don't write as much, like, I have friends who, like, support me with my writing, and they don't know that much about, you know, storytelling like how you and I do, but, you know, I can trust that they're there for me, and that they're, you know, supporting me through, you know, my struggles, my writer's block, everything that kind of annoys me personally. They don't understand it, but, you know, an annoyance is an annoyance, so they're there to help pick me up.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the other big one is the rest of my family, especially my older sister Andrea. She's been through some creative writing classes, and she's currently a librarian.
Ooh.
So I definitely, yeah, I send the work to her for a lot of the editing work. A lot of my sisters are actually really good when it comes to grammar and syntax, so.
Oh, it's a family
They're
thing
my
too. I like that.
proofreaders.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to pay. Like, you don't have to pay for the editing. So, like,
It's definitely a bonus.
oh yeah, unless they do charge you. But I'm not gonna ask. But so I talked about this with you guys before we started recording on how I wanted to talk to you guys about writing to music, and I felt like this was something that the three of us could really start to get into. But I guess before we kind of get into that, like, do you guys write to a lot of music in general? Like, when you're writing scenes or when you're designing characters, like, do you guys listen to music when you're doing it?
Oh, absolutely. I think I need it.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. Yeah, I think. Well, it depends on the scene. I think if I'm writing a more casual scene, I don't necessarily need music. But if I'm writing a scene that has a certain mood, I definitely need like music to sort of put me in that mood. I think I've talked about this with you guys like outside of the podcast, so I'll say it on record here what my feelings on this are. I think when you write while you're writing to music, there's sort of like a subconscious influence that the music can have on the tone of like that specific scene that you're writing. It might not even be easy to notice for you, but from what I've seen, it has an impact on how other people will read it. I mean, and it can help you, and it can help you a lot as a writer to write to music.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different. I don't always write with music going in the background. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. A lot of times, I find it can pull me out of the writing, because I'll be sitting there and I'll be like, oh, listen to Danny Carey just burning down that drum kit. So, like, it has the capability to completely pull me out of the moment.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it really depends on my mood at the time, or if I'm writing by myself or with other people in the house kind of thing. It's a little random.
I think for me, like, I had been writing to music for so long that I think it's basically part of my writing process. And I think as my writing style kind of got better in a way, like as I really started to find how I tell my stories, I listened to a lot of instrumentals. And if you guys kind of know from really early on when this Discord was created that, I would sometimes recommend instrumentals. And I think that's just because, for me at least, instrumentals don't have any lyrics to them. So it gives me my own creative freedom to kind of tell how this is playing towards, the scene. And I know that can be a little bit weird, but basically when there's a lyric filled song, it feels like there's already a message there for me, and sometimes it doesn't really kind of align with what I'm trying to write, especially if I'm trying to write like, a dramatic scene or like, maybe just some banter between friends. Like, if I'm writing to a song that has lyrics to it, it kind of means that it's like I get the vibe of it, but it just doesn't really connect overall with what I'm trying to write. So with instrumentals, that's what makes it, I guess, more beneficial for me.
Yeah, it's definitely the emotional connection while you're writing and listening to a certain song. Like, I'm not going to write a fight scene while listening to the Wiggles.
That'd be one hell of a fight scene. I mean, like,
yeah, I might have to try that now.
everyone's in flat colored t-shirts. A couple people are a little bit too old to be in that scene in the first place, but like, you know what? It'll work.
Oh yeah, man, this sounded like a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I'm 100%. Someone needs to reboot children's shows as action heroes.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Oh, I totally want to see Tommy from the Rugrats as a superhero.
But yeah, so I think for me, like, why I wanted to, I think, touch on this one question specifically was because for me, at least, writing to music really does, I guess, evoke a lot.
and it certainly kind of helps set the scene or tell a character's emotions rather than just kind of thinking it right off the fly. Like there's something kind of pre-built about a song already that kind of sparks an idea into your head. And I'll give an example. So like when I am trying to enter a new location, I'll typically listen to something that, like, depending on the state of the city, I'll listen to the corresponding song, and that'll help me pop up like, okay, so with every beat of the song, here's something new, right? So if it's a heavy metal song, it's kind of like in a rougher area, so that means that there's maybe a gunfight like way far in the east, and maybe there's just trouble looming around every corner or something. If it's something more ethereal, more world building like it's kind of entering a bigger city, there's so much life, so much color, and I don't think, for me at least, that I could have come up with that on my own. Sometimes I do need a little bit of help, and music certainly does do that for me.
I was just going to say that, listening to music is a lot like reading a book, a lot like writing a book. It's an emotional connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate goal of it, is to connect on that level with it.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, when you say emotional connection, yeah, it's definitely an emotional connection, because I sometimes cry when I listen to a new song that I really, really get into. Do we have anyone that we write to specifically? Like, do we have any favorite composers, musicians?
I'd say when I'm listening to music while writing, it is most frequently Tool. I think it's because what I'm writing now is like that dystopian future, like, and a lot of Tool's music is about like the big fractures and the big problems in society, and it's a lot of like really technical, out there, strange music. And I think it just, kind of connects me with that dystopian world that I'm trying to create in the future, kind of thing.
Gabe, how about you?
Yeah, it's work.
Yeah.
Well, I've already mentioned Colin Stetson and Michael Levi for horror, but if I'm working on something that's more like fantasy or science fiction, I like to listen to I don't know if I have any specific composers, but I do just love like looking up lo-fi 24/7 beats to steady playlists. There's this band called The Pillows. I love listening to their music. They're Japanese, so I don't understand a word they're saying, but they have really chill music. And I think if I'm trying to write a more chill or calm or like warm, I guess, a warm scene, I usually write to their music. They have sort of, it's weird. I didn't grow up with their music or anything, but their music has a very nostalgic quality to it. So whenever I write to them, there's sort of this warm nostalgia that creeps over me. And if I'm writing something that's more of an action scene or something, I might write to Hiroyuki Sawano's music, and he did the Attack on Titan soundtrack. So
I think for me, when I'm writing to like specific people, it really does change my scene dramatically. And I think case in point, when I'm writing an emotional scene, I think without fail, I've almost always listened to a song featuring Julie Elvin. And I don't know if you guys know who that is, but she is a vocalist, and she has appeared in the soundtracks for Horizon Zero Dawn. She's done numerous trailer songs, and like,
is she the one who does like the vocalizations in the Horizon music?
Yeah. Like, I love her. When it comes to, I think overall, for anything really, like, there is this composer named Ivan Torrent, and I hope I'm pronouncing his last name properly, I hope I'm pronouncing his name in general properly, because it's Spanish, but he is a composer that I quite literally based an entire thesis paper on, because his music is just so good. Like, there is so many different styles of music that he does, and I think maybe a fourth of my playlist, I think a fourth of one of my playlists is just his music. So this is what May 2020 is bringing us. First, in January, it was The Threat of World War III. In February, it was Australia's wildfires, basically. March, obviously, the coronavirus, COVID-19, shutting the entire world down, basically. April, aliens got announced, and no one's really talking about that. And May, we have killer hornets and tech issues. I hate it. I want to restart. Oh my god. Yeah, how have you... Okay, you know what? Let's talk about that real quick. How have you guys been handling 2020?
It pretty much sucks.
Like, you know, because this is mainly I guess, like a writing podcast for now. It certainly has been something that's worthy of a lot of material. I think it was a tweet that I saw a while ago where it was like, wow, the amount of content that could come out of this entire scenario could be incredible.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is gonna fill the next century worth of novels, non-fictions, historical research.
Like you can
this event.
Yeah. Like, you can imagine, like, other writers like us kind of sitting at home, not really doing much. And with that, there's so much time to write out their story now. Like, you have no excuse sometimes. Or for some people, you don't have an excuse anymore. But yeah, like, for me at least, like being in quarantine has, I guess, for the better, helped my writing out a lot. Because now, I guess now that I'm not playing video games as regularly and I'm not, like, I guess reading as regularly, most of my attention is either going into, like, so much of my attention lately has been going into the podcast, but largely so much of my overall attention has been going towards my book, and at least that's been a blessing. Like, I'm glad that I finally now have, you know, proper time to work on it.
I'm definitely writing a lot more than I used to.
Yeah. Mark, you said kind of a while ago that you hadn't really touched your laptop, I think, since the semester ended, like, a few weeks ago, right? Like, have you done any kind of projects on the side in general, or like even little scribbles on, like, paper or something?
Yeah, actually, I got a creative nonfiction piece out of this whole mess.
Ooh.
Yeah, my family wanted to support our local pizza joint, the one we've been going to literally my entire life.
Mm.
So we ordered pizza from them, and I went down to pick it up. And just had, like, I don't know, this really weird moment with the guy when I walked in, and we just kind of, like, we smile at each other, and just, like, there's just this weird kind of tension in the air where it's, like, you're both really happy to see the other one is still doing okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I just, like, I asked him, I was like, you know, like, how's things? Are you guys, like, how's business, right? Like,
yeah.
I was really worried about them. And thankfully he's like, you know, we're going to make it through this, thankfully. Like, we'll be all right kind of deal. But he told me about how everyone else in that complex has shut down. And they're not working. And it's literally just coast to coast. It's still open there.
Wow.
And he was just like, yeah, it was just this surreal thing, especially as I was driving away and I realized, I'm like, wow, they're the only lights that are on. Like, it was a really weird kind of moment. So I just had to write about it.
Like for everything that this pandemic has brought, and, you know, I'm about to get pretty cheesy, but I mean, how else am I going to end this already chaotic episode? But like I think one of the main benefits of this pandemic has been, I guess, just in general, this Discord and, like, us coming together as friends, because, you know, it's, for one thing, it's certainly helped keep me entertained over not losing my mind. I mean, I've lost my mind tonight, but, like, it's nothing against you guys. But it's just, like, finding people that, like, that kind of get it. And I talked about this, like, a few times already, but, like, finding people that get what you do and get that you're a writer and whatever, like, it's nice to kind of understand that you have that now. At least for me, like, it's nice that I have that, because then I can upload my stories to this group chat and to, you know, get your opinion on things when you guys can, and that means a hell of a lot. Like, I didn't have that, I think, like, even just a few months ago with actual friends. And so, you know, for everything that quarantine has brought, like, it certainly has brought on a couple like a few good things.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to get all, like, pseudo philosophical, middle of the night, stony pseudo philosophy, but I think there is like kind of a tranquility to be found in something that you can't really do anything about, if that makes any sense. Like, I think if you have an exam that's coming up, let's say, for example, like if you have an exam and you're cramming and you're studying, you can be like at the peak of stress. And I feel like in this situation, I don't know, I feel like for me at least there's a sort of I guess, in knowing that like I can't do anything to fix this, and that it's not really my fault. You know, it's not really like this isn't really on anybody. This isn't anybody's fault. This is a bad situation, and we're doing what we can. I don't know, like I can't personally create a vaccine for this virus, so I shouldn't like put it on myself. I shouldn't put the stress of this situation. I shouldn't put the pressure or responsibility of the situation on myself. And like that's not to say people shouldn't take responsibility for their actions during this, but I feel like the stress of the world should not be on every single individual person.
Yeah. I guess ultimately, you know, just to close things off, I guess ultimately, like, there's only really so much that, you know, as a writer, as an artist, as a person, as whatever, like, there's only really so much that you can do sometimes. And
exactly,
it's probably best to, you know, sit back, realize what you're doing, or realize what you can do, and be appreciative of that.
Yeah.
And
like, and that's not to say that we don't have a purpose. We're artists. I think the best thing we can do right now is to keep, you know, trucking on at, keep at it. Like maybe,
yeah.
I mean, if in all this bad situation, I write something that someone reads and it makes them smile, I've accomplished like all that I have needed to in this situation. To me,
Yeah.
to my mind.
Like who would think that, you know, in maybe 5 years, 10 years time, when we're all more than like hopefully all huge successful writers, you know, this is something that, you know, people are going to be referring to as this is our origin story. This is something that this quarantine, for everything that it did, like, it brought together a group of very passionate, very talented writers and created the Ink Guild. I don't think like any other kind of circumstance would have brought us together like this, and for that I'm appreciative of it. You know what? I think after a chaotic episode, I think we'll wrap it up there. So, yeah, so I guess for everyone who's still stuck around, thank you for listening. I guess as a final thing, we were talking about music earlier before I got cut off. So what is, for each of us, what is one song that you would want to recommend to listen to when you write?
Pictures at an Exhibition by the Piano Guys.
Nice.
I was just gonna say I forgot to mention her earlier, but another composer, Yuka Kitamura. She does the Dark Souls music, the Bloodborne music. She's a god, and the song I would recommend from her is "Deacons of the Deep" from Dark Souls 3. It's a beautiful song.
And for my recommendation, I was talking about Julie Elvin earlier, and my choice would be Warrior Princess by End of Silence, featuring Julie Elvin. Definitely do check that out. It's a great piece for action. So, with all this being said, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for bearing through all this. I mean, you know, through everything. And we hope to see you guys for the next episode.